Hello guys, good afternoon everyone. Welcome to 21st Century IAS Academy online Indian economic classes. So we have successfully completed the chapter that is taxation and fiscal system. So the next chapter that is going to be continued of the last chapter, that is called budgeting. So actually in the taxation and fiscal system chapter, I explained you what is the expenditure and what is the income of the government, and overall I have explained you the current budget system in India. So that is completely, it's the present practical thing that is happening. So that is not a theoretical part. So that is what actually the budget that is been presented in the parliament. But as far as the budgeting chapter is concerned, how many different types of budgets can be presented, and we actually go into the economics theoretical part. So generally if you see what exactly meant by budget, so last time we had seen this, budget is called annual financial statement. So that is where the government will simply presents what is the expenditure and what is the income expectations for a particular financial year. But when really comes to budgeting it is a process of estimating the availability of the resources and then allocating them to various activities according to priority. So in one way you can call this budgeting is nothing but it is an approval of spending. So in the budgeting we have different types of budgets. For example, line item budget and performance budget and zero based budgeting, outcome budget. So likewise you can talk n number of budgetings. Generally this budgeting chapter will help you to understand deeply into how differently and in a diverse manner how we can present budget for any country and what type of budget is suitable to which type of economic system. So overall if you read this budgeting chapter, this looks very similar to the last classes, to the last chapter, and most of the things which come in this budgeting chapter we have already finished. But as I reminded you just earlier, this budgeting chapter is also very much like the budget of India. But here apart from that I will give you some extra theories or extra types or classifications of budget. So that is the only thing which is going to make the difference. So in that context, the first thing that we are going to discuss is the line item budget. So why I am not making different slides for this, it is because this is not that important chapter, because most of the questions that appear from this chapter in the mains examination, generally the questions from the budgeting chapter never asked in UPSC prelims examination. But as far as the mains is concerned, this budgeting chapter very few questions may come, but for every 2 years maybe one question or not. So this is not that priority chapter, but this will help you in understanding the budget. So that is the only thing I can tell you. So when it comes to this line item budget, what exactly this line item budget? In 1800 year, the government budgeting was characterized by weak accounting procedures. In 1800, if any governments, for example in 1800 you can see British government was there in England, and also US government was there in United States, France government was there because France, it was becoming republic that time, so France was also there, and there are some other countries like Dutch, Portuguese, etc. So these countries they used to present this budget. So that time this government budgeting, it was very much characterized by weak accounting procedures, and there was a little central control, and there was poor monitoring of the budget, and there was poor allocations, and there were difficulties in prioritizing the sectors in which we have to allocate more money likewise. So in the late 19th century this line item budget was introduced to remove such weaknesses of earlier budgeting procedures, and it became one of the most common form of the budgets in large number of countries. And what exactly this line item of budget. As I told you, in the late 19th century, like 1890s, that time, so most of the countries they started following this line item budget, and it is one of the common forms in large number of countries. So what exactly this line item budget is all about? So let us see. So line item budget, it simply says, it first identifies the objects of expenditure, and whatever the expenditure that the government is intended to spend or intended to present, first it will make it into like objects. Perhaps you might have understand by now, those who are from the software profession, they would understand this better, because see, what is Java language? It's an object oriented language, right? So if you want to use any of the features, you can simply download the objects, you can import the objects, you can use it. If you want to use one button, you can import that button object. If you want to use some checkbox, you can download that object. So likewise, it's an object oriented program, right? So ante first of all, what it will do, wherever the government is spending, it will make objects. For example, all the salaries of the government, it come into object number 1. What is the name of that object? Salaries. So all the traveling allowances of the government, so that is object number 2, traveling allowances. Traveling allowances. So all the office expenses of the government, or the administrative expenses of the government, they will be called as, for example, object 3, that is traveling expense, office expenses. For whole law and order purpose, for example, if the government is spending, object number 4, so that is law and order. And under the law and order, whatever the expenses that the government is making, it will be included in the object number 4. From whichever department or from whichever ministry, if a person is working for the government, the salaries will come under the object number 1, and all the salaries of the government will come under object number 1. So likewise, we will make the objects, object 1, object 2, object 3, object 4. So for each and every object, now the government will allocate the money. So this line item budget means, see, these objects, object 1, object 2, 3, generally we call them as line items, and all the items will be laid down in a line. So this is like this. For example, if you consider this as a line, here object 1, how much expenditure, here object 2, how much expenditure, here object 3, how much expenditure, here object 4, how much expenditure, and so on. And a line items budget. So that is called line item budget. Sorry. So there is some problem with the PPT. One second, let me restore it. Okay, so this is the one. So this is line items. So there I will write you what exactly this line item budget means. Give me 1 second. I'll restore this. So this is the definition for the line item budget. You can write this also. Budget in which individual financial statements, individual financial statements are, 1 second, budget in which the individual financial statements, that is items, are grouped by cost centers or departments. It shows that the comparison between the financial data for the past accounting and estimated figures for the current or future period. So this is the definition for the line item budget. So actually what the thing that we focus on this line item budget, that is important. Agencies that do not exceed the ceiling prescribed. And for example, for the object 1, if the government is allocating 100 rupees, then an agency which is dealing with the object number 1 should not exceed this ceiling prescribed by the government of India. And agencies do not exceed the ceilings prescribed, right? So a central authority will be there in this even line item budget also, because I am speaking about 1890s that time or 1900s. A central authority called as finance ministry will be there. It watches over the spending, and each department's expenditure are given a separate line item budget, and each and every department will be given a separate line item budget. So what is the use of this type of budgeting? You can write this also if you want. The positive thing is it is very easy to understand and it is easy to implement also, and it facilitates a centralized control. First one is it is easy to understand, because for each and every object you are allocating some X money, and the next year depending on your past allocations you will increase or increment, or you will simply increase the percentage of your spending. So it is very easy to understand and implement, and not only that, it facilitates centralized control and fixing of authority and responsibility. It facilitates centralized control because the finance ministry, it can clearly monitor, to this department I have given this much of money. It is not project wise, it is object wise. So at a time you are allocating some money, and the next year you may increase it or you may decrease it depending on your priority. So it facilitates the centralized control and fixing of authority and responsibility. So these two are the positives. But whereas when it comes to the negatives, it doesn't provide enough information to the top levels about the achievement of individual units. And for objective 1, you have given this much of money, but what is their achievement? You cannot sum up this, because for salaries you have given this much of amount, but out of that what did you gain? అంటే మీరు శాలరీస్కి ఒక 100 కోట్లు ఇచ్చేసారు. ఆ 100 కోట్లు ఇవ్వడం వల్ల ప్రభుత్వానికి ఏం వచ్చింది వెనక్కి? వాట్ ఈస్ ద అచీవ్మెంట్ or what is the activity of individual units? You may not know, because you have to consider other things to tell this achievement. And what is the achievement an IAS officer? It is not dependent on only him. It all depends on what kind of the decisions that the government has taken, what kind of the decisions that the superiors of an IAS officer has taken, and how the people under the IAS officer is functioning. So by considering all these things, then only you can tell the success of an IAS officer. Success of one man is not possible in countries like democracy. So it's a collective agenda. So one man cannot pass the law, and even one man cannot implement the law, and even one man cannot bring the order in the law. So it's not possible. So this line item budget, it doesn't provide enough information to the top levels about the achievements and activities of individual units. So this is another drawback. So as I told you, perhaps these type of questions, they very rarely come in the examination, but it doesn't mean like I'm discouraging you people not to read it. You have to read it, but only to some extent, not to a major extent. Like the other chapters, monetary policy and fiscal policy, these chapters are not that great when it comes to the examination point of view, but you need to understand the essence of it, because without understanding the essence of it, we cannot really decipher the present budgets that are coming every year. So that is very important. So this is called line item budget, right? So apart from this budget, I have brought some other budgets also, like this, for example, zero based budgeting, base budgeting, activity based budgeting, Kaizen budgeting, incremental budgeting. I have brought them also, but anyway I will explain these things with a perfect slides. But for line item budget, I didn't bring the slide because I felt like it is not required. So apart from this, I will also talk about outcome budget. I think base budget I won't talk about. Incremental budget, it's very easy. Zero based budgeting I will talk, and Kaizen budgeting I will talk. Base budgeting, it's not that great, generally depending on the last year's base how you are functioning, so that's not a great thing. Activity based budgeting, I think in this place I will explain you what is meant by outcome budgeting, and incremental budgeting, I think in this place I will explain you traditional method of budgeting, right? So because after making these slides, I introspected myself, are really these things are important? Am I really going into more economic? I'm going more into the economics theory. That is not required. We are not doing economics PhDs or PGs. Why we are learning all these things? You perfectly know that we are learning these things for the marks itself. But you need to know the subject and essence of these things. So otherwise there is no way that we can understand this. So without wasting the time, let us go into the next one. This is called traditional budgeting. So what exactly meant by traditional budgeting? దీన్నే తెలుగులో ఏమంటారంటే సాంప్రదాయ బడ్జెట్ అంటారు, right? So that's not required. So what is meaning of traditional budgeting? It is a method of preparation of the budget in which last year's budget is taken as base. So that is what I told you, in the place of base budgeting, I will explain this traditional budgeting. So traditional budgeting or base budgeting, both are actually same, but without naming it, because this name generally more newspapers and more articles and more books have used this word, that is called traditional budgeting. You can call it as like base budgeting, there is nothing wrong in it. So what is meant by traditional budgeting? For example, last year to one ministry I have given this much of budget. So this year how much budget I have to increase? And by taking the last year as base, how much actually you are increasing the allocations in this year's budget? That is called, depending on the base, you are increasing the budget. So only those items in the traditional budgets need to be justified, which are over and above last year's budget. Which means, for example, see, last year ministry 1, ministry 2, ministry 3. So like this, each ministry has given its own allocations. For example, for ministry 1 we have given 10 crore, for ministry 2 we have given 20 crore, for ministry 3 we have given 30 crore. So now, for example, in the next year for the same ministries, we haven't changed anything to the ministry 1, same 10 crores we have given. So ministry 2 also we haven't changed anything, but when it comes to the ministry 3, instead of 30, now we have given 35 crore, an increase of 5 crore rupees. So in the traditional budgeting, we need to justify why we have increased the budget allocation to M3, ministry 3. So we don't talk about ministry 1 and ministry 2, because last year already we have justified for the allocations, right? In the last budget already, why we had given 10 crore, why we had given 20 crore to ministry 2, already we have submitted the details to the parliament. But this time we have only changed the allocations to the ministry 3. So now we must justify why, when compared to the last year's budget, why there is an over and above allocations to the ministry 3. So we need to justify only this thing. So we are justifying this year's budget based on the last year's budget by taking it as a base. So that is called as traditional budgeting, or you can call it as base budgeting also, as I have told you. So what are the advantages? It is very easy to implement. If you are changing any allocations, then only you need to give the justification. If there is no change in the budget, and as usually last time it was passed very smoothly, this year also it will be passed very smoothly, right? And second one is, it brings stability in the functionality of the government. Obviously, every time when something is happening without any hurdles, that is called as stability. For example, as part of your UPSC preparation also, every day consistently, if you are studying for 8 hours, generally we say that your preparation is in stability, it is in very stability mode. So otherwise what will happen? Every time if you are changing the numbers, and every year if you are changing the allocations, what will happen? So definitely one fine day there would be some problem, and every year you have to do all the work again from 0 to 100. So every time you need to justify what is happening, this is happening, that is happening, etc., and so much of headache. So this functionality of the organization, or else functionality of the government in that case, so that will get stabilized. There will be no stumbling blocks in passing the budget. Next is promotes decentralization, and it won't be like centralized monitoring. We have given some money to you, it's done. So how that money would be spent, you do it, I will only monitor, right? So it promotes decentralization in the sense, already some work has been completed in the last year. Now this year, why only there is a certain increase in the allocation? That would be done by a separate department. So the finance ministry won't be involved, right? So that is another thing. And it gives opportunity to consolidate projects into a single larger one. Every time if you are doing something, every time if you are doing the same thing, so consolidation will happen. For example, see, you are studying history book 1, history book 2, history book 3. So every time you are studying these books, then one fine day what will happen, you will consolidate all these things and you will bring your history knowledge. Same thing, every year you are doing the same thing, and after 4 years what you will understand, last 3 years we have allocated different monies for different projects. There is no such need. This year what we will do, we will consolidate all these projects and we will bring it into a new one. So that is called consolidation of schemes. And different projects which are aiming for same goal, now they will be under one goal. And next thing is, it is easy to prepare because last year you had done and this year you will simply do the copy paste. So here what is happening is, the whole task of preparing budget would be so easy. The same thing happens with your economic survey also. Most of the things that are done in the economic survey, they were, this year's economic survey, that is completely based on the last year's economic survey. Same words will get repeated, same chapters, same names, same diagrams, only the numbers will change. So it's very easy to prepare because the paperwork already you have done. If there is any changes this year, only you will do or you will substitute those changes. That's it. But there are some disadvantages. It is very much fixed and it is very rigid, and last year you have done, this year also you are doing the same thing. There is no differentiation, you are showing it up, or you are bringing no differentiation. So that is one big drawback. And there is less motivation as they are prepared by top management and bureaucratic. So definitely how the budget is coming, like from the top, the finance ministry and the secretaries under him, they are preparing the budget, and rest of the departments and rest of the people who are going to implement this, they have to follow the orders of their superiors. So it's completely unmotivational, because motivation always comes when we do certain things on our own. If somebody is pushing you to study UPSC examination, where the motivation will come? You need external motivation for that. But whenever you are doing things on your own, then definitely the inner motivation will come. So that is where in your public administration you will study about motivation and morale. Morale, it has to be on your own. Motivation, it may come from outside or it may come from inside. And excessive reliance on the past year's data, right? So last year you have done something, this year you will simply borrow the same data. Next year also you will pass this data to next year's budget, and then next year you will pass the last year's previous budget. So like that. And deliberate increase in budgeting cost. Sometimes the ministry 30 crore, why it has increased it to 35 crore? Simply to make some difference, deliberate. Some ministries also, they may ask the finance minister, see finance minister, last year you have given this much of budget, this year you shouldn't allocate the same number, I need some increase. Because every ministry, what is the first thing they do when it comes to the budget is always they try to increase their numbers so that they can get more allocations and they can do more development, so that they can remain in that ministry seat forever. In that ministry seat forever. That is what, if you become an IAS officer and if you are posted under one minister as a personal secretary or as a departmental secretary, the first thing that the minister is going to ask you is, see IAS officer or C secretary, last year we have been allocated 11,000 crore budget. This year at any cost it should be 12,000 crore budget. You discuss with the finance secretary in whichever way you want, but I need 12,000 crores budget. So that would be the order to you from your superior. So what you should do? You should find the channels to increase your budget. So what is the thing that you are going to convey to the finance minister? Finance minister, last year you have given us 11,000 crore. Barely we couldn't do any new programs. So this year at least we need to increase. At least you should increase this budget by 1,000 crore. So 12,000 crore we can do some things which we couldn't do in the last year. So when such kind of deliberations happens between the ministry and the finance ministry, definitely the finance ministry would consider it. So there is a deliberate increase in budget cost because no one wants to lose their political political wishes, because each and every MP is important to the party, right? So no priority for allocation resources, simply they are allocating the resources. Then don't find out. For example, M1 ministry, last time we have given 10 crore, this year is really 10 crore is required, what kind of projects he has done, or what kind of projects that ministry has done, what is the outcome of that project, whether that particular project is performing well or not well. So they won't discuss this, they won't see the outcome of these allocations, but they simply give it. So there is no priority for the allocation of resources. Generally you see, what is the biggest priority to any person in this world? Food. Next is drinking water, next is shelter, next is education, next is health services. But the biggest irony in this world, especially in India, I would call, the biggest irony is we never talk about these things. Politics has to happen on the lines of development. Yesterday the Prime Minister Modi very proudly said, so Bihar has proved it again that the politics always happens in the name of development. But do you really believe his words? Do you really believe the Prime Minister's words? I cannot believe it. Because as far as I am concerned, when I see the news or when I read the newspapers or when I open the social media, I believe the politics in this country is happening on the lines of religion or caste. So it is happening either of these lines. It is happening either on the basis of religion, which strictly happened in Uttar Pradesh, Gujarat, and I would call in Bihar also, it is happening on the caste lines. So now this disease is coming to the Hyderabad also. So last time Dubaka elections, 2 days back, it proved it. So what kind of language that these people are using when it comes to the political party people? So they are completely against one movie simply because that movie portrayed in a teaser hero as a Muslim. RRR movie, right? Recently what many of the one political party people warned Rajamouli, see, you are displaying or you are projecting Junior NTR as a Muslim or Junior NTR's character, that is Komaram Bhim, Gond warrior, as Muslim. So we never know about the movie. By simply seeing the teaser, that is just 3 minutes, you are coming to a conclusion. So what the political people are concerned about movies, you are concerned about people, you are concerned about development, you are concerned about education, you are concerned about health services, but you are talking about the movies. If you are very much concerned about the people, then why the tribal people are still backward in this country? Why the SC people are still backward in this country? If you are really concerned about these people, because now you want to cash it, so that in the social media your name will be projected and then people will vote you again. So this is what exhibiting in the budgeting procedures also. In the traditional budgeting, especially when it comes to India, what is the biggest problem that we are doing is this: no priority for allocation of resources. We give no priority. The priority must be given firstly to education and health. And last time COVID-19 has clearly witnessed where we are in health services. Today, if the people are saving themselves from the COVID, so definitely it is not the success of the government, it is the success of the people. We, by hook or crook, or by going to a hospital, or by simply taking the medicines from some pharmacy, we are saving ourselves. It is not the hospitals which they are saying they are saving. And how much government is concerned, we have seen. Okay, to some extent some state governments like Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, they are doing good. What about the other states? So that is what. So this is traditional budgeting. So next part is zero based budgeting. So from zero to hero. So this is the tagline of zero based budgeting. So it's a very simple one actually. So what zero based budgeting, it is defined as planning and budgeting process required by each manager. Here you can say each minister, because generally in economics they give the economics to both organizations and the government in the same way, because after all the government is also a big organization. So establish objectives for his function, or else simply establish objectives. Define alternative ways of achieving objectives, select the best alternative, break the line. Okay, you no need to write any of these things, leave it, this is too much. So it is a method of budgeting in which all expenses must be justified for each new period. Zero budgeting starts from a zero base. Last time what I told you, ministry 1, ministry 2, ministry 3. 10 crore, 20 crore, 30 crore, right? What I told you, next year M1, M2, M3, you allocated 10 crore, 20 crore same, but you have increased this to 35 crore. I told you this is not to be justified, this is no need to be justified, but this is required to be justified. But in the zero based budget next year, last year what I have given, that is completely ridiculous, that is completely irrelevant, not ridiculous, it is completely irrelevant. This year if you want to get allocations, you must prove that you are worthy enough to get that allocation. Last year for example, ministry 1 has been allocated with 10 crore. This year if the ministry asks 12 crore, it has to prove why it need 12 crore. It cannot give this reason, sir, last year you have given 10 crore, that's why this year I am demanding you 12 crore. No, that is an invalid reason. That is completely irrelevant. What you have done in the past years is completely irrelevant. What you need to be done this year, that is relevant. So and everything would be come to zero base. So every project, every function within the government is analyzed for its needs and costs. If ministry 1 is proposing a project 1, so first the government will analyze, is this project really necessary, is this project really relevant. So depending on the needs of that project, the cost will be allocated, and budgets are then built around what is needed for the upcoming period. So first it will identify, ministry 1 has proposed 100 projects, is really these 100 projects are necessary. If only 50 are necessary and other 50 are a waste of time, then they will be deleted. Only the allocations will be done for the rest of the 50 projects. So regardless of whether budget is higher or lower, it doesn't matter. For example, last year ministry 1 had done with 10 crores. This year ministry 1's relevance has increased, so it may go up to 100 crore also. But if the relevance decreased, then it may go up to 5 crore. So it depends on each year's relevance. It doesn't matter in the previous year what you have done, in the future year what you are going to do, it doesn't matter. In current year, what is your priority? So it is a technique which complements the links of existing planning, budgeting and review process. It defines alternative and efficient methods of utilizing limited resources in effective attainment. So this is what UPSC wants, from all you guys. In this country we have limited resources, but we need maximum outcomes. Same thing, you study in a limited manner, but when it comes to the writing answers, I need maximum output of quality answers. So examination and government, they are not different. So that is about zero based budgeting. Rest of the issues we will continue from the tomorrow's class. Thank you. If you have any questions regarding of today's class, you can always message me. That's it for today.